What would Sammy Sinclair do? That's a question that always used to be easy to answer. In a galaxy where tomorrow was never a sure thing, where any corner you turned, any dive you walked into, could be the one where you found yourself face to face with a gun that had the bullet with your name on it waiting in the chamber. Staying one step ahead of danger meant never letting yourself get complacent. No attachments. That's the number one rule. You start getting too comfortable, you take your eyes off the door for just one instant, and that could be the moment the Grim Reaper decides to come in and hang his hat. I was never too interested in staying still to begin with. It's a big, wide open sky with a whole lot of sights to see, and if you want to get out there and experience them all, staying in one place and dreaming about the horizon ain't gonna make it come to you any faster. So maybe you change your name. Maybe you learn to play the saxophone. Maybe you leave your old life behind and go out into the universe to make a name for yourself. And maybe the music business doesn't work out as well as you'd hoped. Maybe the debts start racking up. You start to fall in with the wrong kind of crowd. Maybe your life becomes the kind where other people, other living, breathing human beings just trying to make their way in the universe same as you were, become nothing more to you than another paycheck. Another way to keep fuel in the tank and the space mafia off your back for one more week. But you still wouldn't trade it for any other life. If you ever start to wonder if maybe things wouldn't have been easier if you just stayed home, kept up a 9 to 5, maybe settled down with someone who was happy to see your face coming through the door, instead of leaving behind a trail of people who'd be more liable to blow it out for the shotgun. You just take a look out the window at that sparkling sea of stars, and you know you wouldn't have missed a moment of it for all the gold on Ganymede. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Think I heard that in a movie once. So when I find myself staring down 6 starfighters with enough firepower combined to leave me and the dosage dingo nothing more than a smear of carbonized matter on the rings of Saturn, one glance at those 5 little letters stamped into the band of plastic around my wrist should be all I need to hit the jets and beat a hasty retreat. It was a suicide mission to begin with. I tried to warn the kid. Some half-cocked but full stupid plan to bust into the Xerxes 4 high-security prison satellite and somehow get back out again in one piece. And for what? Some jerk of a DNA donor who had busted our humps to put in prison in the first place? I'd had a bad feeling from the start. And if I'd had any goddamn sense at all, I'd have said hasta la vista and followed Spanx right out that door. But instead I hesitated. Ignored that voice in the back of my head that had so far always kept me breathing for another day. I'd found myself doing that a lot lately. I'd brought the kid on just for some cheap labor. Some eager young buck willing to do the heavy lifting for a while before I could ditch him on some rock when I got my sacks back and needed the space in my overhead compartment again. But next thing I knew, here I was, taking stupid risks, almost getting myself killed more times than I care to count. Following him across the solar system and back long after I should have told him and the nutty professor to get the hell off my ship and leave me out of their problems. Maybe it was flattery. I didn't meet fans that often, and usually when I did, they didn't stay fans for long. Maybe it was that I saw something of myself in the kid. Someone trying to make it on their own and cut ties with a past full of disappointments and broken promises. And I gotta say, the Doc's Primo herb didn't hurt neither. But here we are. The plan's gone to shit. Something got screwed up, and now, even if we somehow make it out of this mess, for all I know, every outlaw from Mercury to Uranus is gonna be gunning for our heads. And we'd been on the B-net before. Those corporal bastards back on Ceres had screwed us over and tried using our asses to cover up their... whatever the hell it was they were doing. Corporate intrigue goes right over my head. The kid's new contacts had gotten us off that time. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's to never expect a free lunch. And definitely don't expect 2. Eventually, someone always expects you to foot the bill. And from the sound of things, the kid and the doc might not be in any position to be helping anybody anytime soon. I got what sounds like the doc doing his best to remember the Space Alamo playing in one earpiece, the kid trying to shout last-second changes to the plan over alarm bells, and what I'm sure is a full-blown prison riot in the other. And straight ahead of me, those 6 starfighters with guns aiming squarely from my cockpit, are coming closer by the nanosecond. And that voice in my head and the band on my wrist are both shouting that same old question. What would Sammy Sinclair do? Well, I've known Sammy Sinclair a long time, and there's always been just one answer to that question. Sorry, kid. I yank the earpieces out, twist the controls, and hit the jets, flipping the ship around and sending us flying into open space. Just in time, too, as the first round of fire from the oncoming starfighters leaves scorch marks against the underbelly of the prison satellite where the dosage tango was docked just moments before. As I punch the throttle, white-knuckling the control stick, I calculate the distance from here to the nearest tunnel gate. I got a bit of a head start on these fighters, and the Tango's engines at max output should be enough to get me there before they can catch up. If I can blast my way through, make the jump to FTL even with just a few seconds to spare, I should be able to lose them in the tunnel network, assuming they don't blow me out of the sky first. Ordnance fire is punching holes in empty space around the Tango as the pursuing fighters try to get a lock on us. I divert as much extra power as I can spare to the engines, and get shoved back against my seat as the ship picks up a burst of speed. It was always gonna be like this, I tell myself. Sooner or later you're gonna have to ditch the kid. No sense in getting yourself killed over someone else's cockamamie scheme. I try not to picture whatever could be going on back at the prison. Try not to think of the dock holed up somewhere under fire. Try not to see the kid's face in my mind as he realizes what happened. He's just some kid, I make myself think. Just another mark. It's been fun, but he shouldn't have expected anything better from you. You're not some father figure. You're not anyone's hero. You're Sammy Sinclair, the scat king of Ganymede. And this is what you do. When the going gets tough, Sammy gets gone. Right? In the distance, I can see the lights of the tunnel gate now, blinking dots on the horizon. The fighters are gaining, but I'm gonna make it. 60 seconds and I'm home free. Sammy Sinclair will live to fly another day, and that's the only thing that matters. That's what I'm focusing on when another blast of ordnance finds its mark, clipping the dosage tango and sending me and the ship spiraling. I swear, wrenching the controls to right ourselves and fix our vector as luggage, furniture, and assorted detritus is sent clattering around the cabin and cockpit. Something small, hard, and sharp hits me in the face, landed in my lap. As I grip the controls with one hand, I reach down with the other to toss whatever it is off to the side. But as my hand wraps around the smooth rectangular object, I glance down, and for a moment I freeze. In my hand is a cassette tape, with a plain white label, hand-lettered in ballpoint pen. Emmy's Best Sammy Sinclair Mix, Volume 4, along with a drawing of a stiff figure in a fedora playing the saxophone. One of the kids' mixtapes. The things were lying around all over the place. There's a lot of time to kill in space, and whenever he wasn't playing with his knives and doing chores around the ship, Emmy was almost always listening to one of those tapes, either over the ship's radio or whenever someone, usually Spanks, insisted on peace and quiet, with headphones on through an old Walkman. And ever since I bought him his own saxophone, the kid would even sit there, headphones in, trying to play along for hours if you'd let him. Sounded mostly god-awful, but I couldn't say it wasn't flattering. I'd been working with him too. The kid would plead with me every day to show him how to play this song or that, and I put up a fight for a while, saying I was too busy and my space scout was acting up. But eventually I'd always give in. The kid was a quick learner, and it was nice to have someone to show off a few of the old tricks to. In fact, I could picture us now, the two of us sitting together on the roof of the dosage tango one night back on Ceres, in between jobs. The kid playing a simple jazz progression I had shown him, and me following along, improvising melodies over the top as the lights of the city glittered, reflected gold and purple against the polished metal of our two saxophones. Spinks had been there too, smoking a cig and leaning against the side of the ship, not saying a word, but tapping his foot in time to the music. While inside the tango, the smell of the dock cooking something for dinner wafted through the open window, intermingling with the music as it echoed out across the night sky. And it's then, sitting there staring at the tape in my hand, reminiscing on that night and all the others, the scrapes we'd been in, the wounds that had been patched up, the sound of the kid picking out tunes in the sax. The dock's awful cooking, just Real bad cooking, the absolute worst. Mars, Ganymede, Ceres, Callisto, all the worlds we've been to. All the adventures and heartache and drinks and laughs. And all along, every time I walked in the door, the kid's big brown eyes lighting up to see my face. Suddenly, it feels like a weight I hadn't even known was there was lifted off my shoulders. Like realizing he'd been flying for years with a parking brake on. Like I'd been making the same old left turn every day for years, and suddenly, for the first time, I'm realizing there's a clear path straight ahead. The lights of the tunnel gate up ahead blur, and I realize there are tears in my eyes. Surprised, I reach up to wipe my eyes with my sleeve. As I pull my arm away, I see the wristband. Those 5 letters staring at me accusingly. I'd worn it every day for years, a constant reminder for any time I felt unsure of who I was, what I should do, or what was most important. The wristband burns in my stinging vision, and I can still hear that voice in the back of my head whispering, "You know what to do. The gate is right there. You can still make it." What would Sammy Sinclair do? "Ah, fuck Sammy Sinclair," I shout. And before the voice in my head could even formulate a response, I'm hitting reverse in the thrusters and cranking back on the control stick, executing a sudden U-turn in space. The Tango groans and protests the maneuver, a vintage model not expected to be treated so roughly. But if anyone is more surprised than my own ship, it's the squadron of pursuing starfighters, who I can guess were most definitely not expecting the quarry to suddenly be racing toward them at max speed. They scramble to break formation before the Tango can crash headlong through them, and in the momentary confusion I'm already blasting, managing to clip one fighter and sending it spiraling into his closest wingmate. Both fighters explode, sending shrapnel flying in every direction. The Tango's battery is still diverted to the engines, but there's just enough power in the front shields that we come out unscathed even as the old ship barrels through the cloud of shredded metal. As me and the Tango cut through the wreckage and circle back around for another pass, the remaining fighters are doing the same, now ready and raring for a fight. 4 on 1, and they ain't even had the courtesy to buy a fella a drink first. The Tango's guns are still wired together from the doc's rush job before the prison break, cutting my aiming capability down to shit. It was a lucky roll of the dice getting the drop on those fighters and landing that 2-in-1 shot. I don't expect to get the same opportunity a second time. But if they think me and the dosage Tango ain't got any more tricks up our sleeve, they got another thing coming. I flip a switch, activating remote controls in the guns of the 2 lens blaster starfighters tucked beneath the Tango's brim, which swivel out to face the oncoming fighters as 2 windows pop up on my main screen, displaying camera feeds each labeled by a sunglasses emoji, followed by the number 1 or 2. I reduce the engines to 2/3 speed, powering up the Tango shields, and I see the glow of the guns of the oncoming fighters preparing to fire. "Hang on, kid," I think. "I'm coming." But one last thing. As the first blast of ordnance from the oncoming fighters starts to streak across space directly for the Tango, I reach down with my left hand, grasp the plastic band around my right wrist, and yank, snapping it clean off, then tossing it over my shoulder. "Alright, boys," I say, gritting my teeth and wrapping both hands back around the controls mere milliseconds before the first impact. "Let's shuffle." 10 minutes later, and it's over. That's how it is. A fight, a real down and dirty fight, is quick. In the moment, it might sometimes feel like hours, like time slows down, and everyone's taking their sweet time choosing their action. But in actuality, violence blows through like one of those controlled summer storms on Ceres. Starts sudden, ends quick, and no one caught out in it is getting away without at least getting their shoes wet. The 4 fighters that will remain are toast, wreckage afloat in the galactic winds. But me and the Tango didn't make it out unscathed neither. The shields are shot, and that's not the only thing. The Tango's starboard engine is wrecked, main guns are disabled, a flashing light is warning me that there's a leak somewhere in the coolant system. And from the sounds I'm hearing, I'm guessing I'm gonna need to hunt down another flange capacitor. I took a nasty hatter on the control stick from that blast that knocked out the engine, and I can taste blood dripping down my face and onto my shirt from a wound over my eyebrow I ain't looked at, but I'm sure it's gonna need stitches. But hey, what can I say? There's a reason I wear red. And I'm still breathing for now. Hard and heavy, but me and the Tango are still mostly in one piece. And good thing too, because as I kick the protesting ship into gear, limping off at the max speed I can wring out of her one remaining engine back toward the prison satellite where Emmy and Pete are waiting, I know this next part is going to be even harder than pitting 2 busted up old relics against 6 top-of-the-line starfighters. And as it turns out, I'm right. But not for the reasons I was thinking. Because here I am now, back at the scene of the crime, back at Xerxes 4. And if I'd had a fantasy of rushing in, guns blazing at the last moment, a big damn hero after all, coming to the triumphant rescue after seeing the light, or the kid's face going from despair to joy when he realized, of course, old Sammy had his back. That fantasy was dashed the second I got close enough to take in the sight of what was left of the prison. It's hard to get a complete picture of what happened, but it's obvious whatever it was wasn't good. If the 2 massive holes blown through the outer walls of the satellite weren't enough of an indication, the bodies and parts of bodies of guards and prisoners who'd been unlucky enough to get caught up in whatever bada boom had caused all this damage, or been sucked out into space by explosive decompression after the fact, make things pretty clear. I circled around the satellite at a distance at first, wary of more starfighters, but it seems like there ain't any more wagons left to roll out the welcome. As I get closer, maneuvering the Tingo carefully around orbiting detritus, both human and mechanical, I try hailing both the kid and the doc's phones but get no response. I entertain the notion that maybe the 2 of them somehow fought their way out, hijacked one of the dock prison transport shuttles, but a flyby of the docking bay and a quick count of the parked shuttles puts a bullet in that idea fast. I'm trying to think of some way, any way the 2 of them could have made it out. And that's when I see it, floating through the wreckage in open space like so much other cold matter. And I feel my heart dip over the edge of the event horizon has been circling and get crushed to molecules in a black hole of despair. A saxophone, spinning slowly through the void. Purple chrome reflecting the lights of the dosage tango, like the lights of a city on a peaceful night long ago when you didn't know how to recognize how good you had it. And in the reflection, it's like I can see my own face leering back at me as that voice in the back of my head picks up that old question one more time. What would Sammy Sinclair do? That's a question that's easy to answer. The same thing Sammy Sinclair has always done. The only thing he knows how to do. Abandon the people he loves and end up all alone.